Hello everyone, my name is Keb, and you're watching Chapter 6 of my Fire Emblem 12 Lunatic Mode Blind LTC. To see what I mean by Blind LTC, head down in the description. But in short, this is my first time playing Lunatic, I haven't planned ahead, and I'm trying to LTC every map one chapter at a time. Let's go kick Lang's sorry ass. This is easily my favorite clear of the run so far. Not only do we obtain 3 entire new star shards to work with, while also getting the chance to stick it to one of the most punchable faces in the series, but a lot of somewhat lucky exact numbers made everything just work out perfectly. Before we get into that though, it's time for some promotions. Pala is such a crazy unit. These stats are on par or even better than the Wolf Guard, who literally join you in Chapter 19. I am really glad that I impulse bought that Master Seal from the last chapter after Sheeta getting a perfect level up, because this clear would have been much harder, if not impossible, if she didn't have 10 movement. This map is a really good example of how LTC works at a strategic level. If you count the squares from Marth's starting position to the throne, he can actually reach it in 6 turns by full moving every turn, except he'll only need to move 2 squares on turn 6. That means that if we can rescue him a distance of 9 tiles or more, then he could theoretically seize the throne as early as turn 4. A good general rule of thumb for the rescue staff is that if one cast can save you at least 2 turns, then it's probably worth going for. Once it's decided that our strategy will involve rescuing Marth to get him 9 tiles closer to the throne, we can sort of work backwards from there. And that's where things get more complicated. There is a horde of 5 knights and 2 promoted bishops forming a literal circle around Lang, and if Marth wants to be close enough to seize on turn 4, that means he'll have to walk into the throne room and be exposed to a ton of enemy fire on turn 3. That's why we've taken our first dip into the armory stat boosters in the form of a Seraph Robe. Marth needs at least 36 health and 12 defense for this to work on Lunatic. The 12 defense is pretty easy to reach since the Taurus Shard and the Rainbow Potion bring him to 11 from base, and the last point can come from a level up like mine did, or you could buy him a Draco Shield. Using stat boosters on Marth may seem like a bit of a waste since we don't really use him for combat. But even if he doesn't kill things, Marth will still need to participate in a lot of battles throughout the course of any efficient playthrough, simply because he needs to charge towards the seize point. And making him tankier will make it much easier to divert attention away from him, since the enemies would rather attack squishier targets. That concept will be on full display during this clear. With our 9-tile rescue strategy in mind, the placement of our units become fairly obvious. Aran needs to start closer to the throne than Marth so that he can perform the rescue on turn 1, and rescuing any later would be hard since bishops only have 6 movement. The rest of our units need to start as close to the top right as possible so that they can help clear our path. To start out with, Aran rescues Marth for a total distance of 10 tiles thanks to a boost from the bottom wall. That's 1 more tile than we technically needed, but this will make things a bit more convenient for us next turn. Pala is going to be tasked with baiting out the 2 mages that are guarding the chest room. These 2 are really tricky to deal with since the left one only moves if you aggro the right one, which means that whoever baits them out needs to be able to tank 2 Bulganone hits. And for that reason, we've reclassed Pala into a paladin for the res base, and we're also using a Pure Water. This Pure Water is quite a hot commodity since we only have 1 of them, and it's our only way to improve survivability against all of these scary mages. Katria has just taken it from Pala because she needs to transport it to Marth for turn 2. Sirius is once again going to be playing a diversion role in this chapter. All of the enemies here have at least 2 crit on him, which means that he can reliably draw aggro as long as we keep our other units out of kill range. And that's why this Swarm Bishop went for him instead of Marth, who only has 2 res with the Rainbow Potion boost. Using other units to bait attacks away from Marth is going to be a theme in this clear, since he's just so far ahead that he can't really be healed by anything except for the physics staff. This little trick here is why boosting Marth forward by 10 tiles on turn 1 is going to be convenient for us. It places him right next to the door, which lets Pala convoy warp a door key over so that Sheeta can retrieve it and then immediately open the door. This lets Chris swoop in and one round the hero blocking the way with exact damage thanks to both strength boosting shards and a steel axe that has been forged with +1 might. It might seem kind of weird that I opted to spend gold on a tiny forge instead of just giving Chris the rainbow potion, but it's because we actually need him to be at a lower res for AI manipulation purposes on this coming enemy phase. We need that mage near the top right to go for Chris instead of Marth, since we don't have the resources to heal Marth to full health afterwards. That's why we've used a Pure Water on Marth, boosting him up to 7 res. If Chris had used the Rainbow Potion, that would place him at 5 res, meaning the mage would do 2 more damage to Chris compared to Marth. Everyone always says that FE12 enemies only care about dealing the most damage, but that's not the full story. The AI chooses targets based on a formula that calculates expected damage, which also considers hit rate. I have a quick video that explains this concept, which is linked in the description, but the gist of it is that expected damage can be calculated by multiplying total damage with displayed hit. Chris is so fast that the lower display hit against him is enough to make the mage go for Marth, even with the 2 res advantage. The exact calculations are on the screen, but in short, Chris needed to stay at 3 res for this to work. The mage ended up missing Chris like a scrub, but we could have brought him back to full health with a Physic, a Mend, and a Vulnerary use. I ended up just dropping the Vulnerary since I had planned for it to be used anyways. As I had alluded to in preps, this next enemy phase is really hard to manipulate. Marth has to be on this exact tile to reach the throne, and the only other units that can protect him are Chris and Sirius. There is only one configuration that makes everyone survive, and it still relies on Chris dodging 1 out of 2 70-ish displayed hits from the bishops. It can also work if he dodges 2 knight attacks, which are also around 70 displayed hit. This amounts to roughly a 33% chance of success. Luckily, there's a save point right there. How convenient. To understand why this next enemy phase plays out the way it did, we first need to understand FE12 enemy movement order. I'm going to make a video that explains the AI in detail at some point, but for now, it's crucial to remember that lower movement units act first. That means the knights will attack before the bishops, and the order in which the knights attack is equal to their L switching order. The next key point is that the game moves enemy units in phases, where the first phase is moving all enemies that can deal lethal damage. The next phase is making all attacks while respecting movement order. The attack target chosen is based on expected damage, which does include the 2% crit rule. Luckily, these dumb knights are all 1 damage off of killing Marth, which makes 2 of them attack Sirius instead. These knights also block off the bishop from reaching Sirius, which is great because Sirius would have burned in the flames of Hellfire. These bishops could have killed Marth as well if they both attacked him, but the pure water from last turn leaves them just short of lethal, and the 6 res on Marth is barely enough to eke out lower expected damage than 3 res on Chris. Chris did still need to dodge one of the Hellfires, but he's way better at dodging than Marth is. I probably should have chipped an enemy with an iron bow here for weapon XP, but oh well. Now that we've survived the onslaught, it's time for Chris to bash Lang's stupid face in with a hammer. This crit obviously wasn't needed, but man did it ever feel good. Sheeta recruits the Aquarius Shard, who helps Sirius gain a well-deserved level up on this bishop. I debated for a long time whether or not to actually give Sirius this level up, since he has a 60% chance to gain luck, which might ruin his niche. But I decided that enemies are nearing 14 skill anyways, which results in 2 crit against 5 luck. And also he didn't gain luck. Here, I decided that the XP that this knight would give isn't really worth the 2 silver lance uses. Pala also doesn't need any more lance rank, so I just don't attack at all. Rickard finishes up looting Lang's rat hole of a castle, and that's chapter 6, completed in 4 turns. I'll see you next time.